Jamal Khan felt a familiar thrill as he worked alone in the shuttle bay. The station's dim lights cast long shadows over his tools and equipment. His life as a mechanic had taught him to watch every sensor for anything unusual. That evening, a soft beep broke the steady hum of the system. A distress beacon had appeared on his console. Signal came from a moon no one had claimed. He stared at the blinking icon, his heart beating faster. That small mystery stirred his curiosity and pulled him out of routine. He packed his kit. With careful hands, every tool had its place in the custom bag strapped to his shoulder. He recalled past rescues when human ships lost power or guidance. Those memories gave him both confidence and a quiet longing for discovery. He tightened his helmet straps and double-checked his oxygen levels. Outside, the airlock hissed open, revealing the black void of space and the pale blue disk of the moon below. A shiver of excitement ran through him. He knew this mission might bring no glory, but it would be a chance to help someone in need. Jamal climbed into his shuttle and initiated the launch sequence. The gentle vibration beneath his seat reminded him of home and the simple comforts of life on the station. He set a course using the beacon's coordinates. Outside his viewport, stars glimmered like pinpricks in a vast blanket. Minutes passed slowly as he monitored distance and fuel levels. He thought of the silent corridors of the station, quiet moments spent fixing broken machines, and the feeling of purpose each repair brought him. He wondered what kind of ship he was about to meet. As the shuttle broke atmosphere and approached, the moon, the drifting vessel, came into view. It hung there like a wounded bird, its sleek hull marred by dents and scorch marks. Strange glyphs glowed faintly along its sides, pulsing in time with the beacon. The design was elegant, unlike any human craft. Jamal's breath caught at the sight. He could almost feel the weight of its history etched into every panel. He guided his shuttle carefully toward the docking port, nerves tingling with anticipation and respect for this silent traveler. He eased the shuttle alongside the abandoned ship and engaged the magnetic clamps. The soft thud of connection gave him a steady sense of contact. Inside the docking tunnel, his flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Dust motes danced in the pale glow as he stepped forward. Each footstep echoed in the metal corridor, a calm reminder of his presence. He brushed a loose wire aside and felt a surge of empathy for this lonely vessel. It held stories he could not yet read, and he was the first to bring promise of life. Back to its circuits. The bridge lay ahead, its doors half open, as if waiting for him. He paused at the threshold, noting the hush that filled the cabin. Control panels stood dark, their screens cracked and lifeless. The power core lay cold and dormant, circuit boards exposed like broken bones. A single seat remained upright, its cushion torn and frayed. Alien symbols flickered on a central console, calling to him in a language he could not yet understand. Jamal swallowed hard. He felt a mix of fear and awe. This was more than a repair job, it was a rescue of someone's. Hope he set down his bag and pulled out wires, tools, and spare parts. His fingers moved with confident skill, guided by training and compassion. He tested each circuit gently, listening for the hum of returning power. His mind stayed calm even as his heart raced. He thought of the being who had sent this beacon, trusting him to come. He wondered what face would greet him when life returned. With a final connection, he prepared to bring light back to this silent ship. Then he took a steady breath and stepped deeper into the shadowed bridge. Jamal stepped deeper into the silent bridge, his boots tapping softly against the metal floor. His flashlight flickered across control panels, each one covered in strange symbols he couldn't read. Dust clung to the edges as if time itself had paused. The ship didn't feel like a wreck-it, felt like a forgotten dream, waiting to be remembered. In the center of the room stood a large pod, its glass surface fogged and glowing dimly. Something inside it moved gently like a breath. Jamal's heart skipped a beat. There was someone still alive. He walked closer, slowly, respectfully. The pod had curves unlike anything human built. Its shape was elegant, soft around the edges. A single blue light pulsed softly near the bottom, in rhythm with the figure's breathing. Through the foggy glass, Jamal could make out the shape of a person, fragile-looking, curled slightly. Long strands of silvery hair floated around. The head she looked peaceful, like she was sleeping in a dream. Jamal's fingers hovered near the control panel, unsure of what to press. He didn't want to make a mistake, didn't want to hurt her. He pulled back and sat beside the pod, setting his tool bag on the floor. First, the ship needed power. Without it, the stasis system might fail. He turned his attention to the engine systems, following tangled wires and broken panels. It was messy, burnt circuits, broken connectors, and technology far beyond anything he had worked on before. Still, he worked with patience. He used his scanner to trace energy paths, carefully matching wires based on color and shape. Slowly, the pieces began to make sense. His hands worked steady, guided by care and quiet determination. Hours passed. Outside the small viewport, the moon's surface glowed under starlight. Inside the ship, silence gave way to soft humming as the lights flickered faintly. Jamal smiled to himself. A small success. The core was still weak, but enough to bring the pod out of sleep if done right. He returned to the bridge and placed a hand gently on the glass. "I don't know who you are," he whispered, "but I'm here to help. Just hold on a little longer." The blue light blinked once, as if in response. Jamal took a breath and tapped gently on the stasis control panel. The symbols glowed under his fingers. He followed the blinking patterns, hoping they guided him true. Then, a quiet hiss escaped the pod. Steam drifted from its edges as the glass slowly lifted open. Warm air spilled out, carrying a soft, sweet scent he didn't recognize. He stepped back, his heart thudding. The figure inside moved a twitch of the fingers, a shift of the head. Slowly, she sat up. She was not human. Her skin shimmered with pale lavender tones, smooth like polished stone. Her eyes, large and silver, blinked with confusion. She looked around, then at Jamal. For a moment, neither of them moved. Jamal raised both hands in peace, stepping back gently. "You're safe," he said softly, unsure if she understood. She tilted her head slightly, her long hair flowing behind her like light silk. Her breathing was slow, controlled, but her eyes never left his face. He reached into his bag and pulled out a bottle of water, placing it carefully on the floor. Between them, then he stepped back again. She watched the bottle, then reached out slowly, picking it up with graceful fingers. She examined it curiously, then took a cautious sip. Her throat moved as she drank, and a faint warmth appeared in her expression. She looked at Jamal again this time, not with confusion, but with a quiet awareness. He smiled, not expecting. One in return, but hopeful, then, with a slow and careful motion, she reached out her hand toward him. Jamal stood still, surprised. Her fingers trembled just slightly, but the meaning was clear. It was not a gesture of defense. It was one of trust. Slowly, he stepped forward and gently placed his hand in hers. Her skin was cool and soft, her grip light. At that single touch, something passed between them, an understanding, a fragile bond. Neither spoke, yet so much was said. For the first time, Jamal didn't feel like a rescuer. He felt like a guest. This was her ship, her world, her silence. And she had chosen to let him in. Jamal sat quietly on the floor of the alien ship's bridge, his back resting against a smooth wall. Across from him, the alien woman sat with her legs folded, still watching him with careful eyes. Her silver gaze moved slowly from his face to his hands, and then to the open tool bag beside him, though they had not spoken a single word. Something soft and gentle had started to grow between them, something made of silence, kindness, and shared presence. The air inside the ship was warmer, now more stable. Systems were returning to life, one light at a time. Jamal had reconnected a few of the ship's main power conduits using cables from his shuttle. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The engines were still off, but life support had returned. The lights glowed softly along the corridor, and the hum of fresh oxygen flowing through vents reminded him of home. He could feel the ship slowly waking up, like a sleeping giant stretching its limbs after a long rest. The alien woman, he still didn't know her name, stood and walked carefully toward the nearest panel. She placed her hand on it, and then Symbols on the screen responded, shifting gently into shapes that pulsed with light. She was testing the systems, maybe checking the damage. Her fingers moved like a dance, full of purpose and understanding. The ship responded to her as if it knew her touch. She looked over her shoulder and gestured toward him. He stood up and walked over slowly. She tapped the screen once and looked at him, her eyes asking a question he couldn't understand. Jamal pulled out his small translator device, a human tool used for basic communication, activated it, and placed it between them. She studied it curiously, then tapped it with a slender finger. A soft voice came from the device. It didn't sound like her, but it translated her thoughts. This ship is broken. You repaired its breath. Why? The voice was mechanical, but the feeling behind it was gentle. Jamal took a moment to answer. Because you needed help, he said. Simply, your ship called out, I answered. The translator repeated his words in her language. She looked at him for a long time, as if measuring his answer, weighing it inside her. Then she nodded once. Her expression remained calm, but something in her eyes changed. A little warmer, a little more open. She walked back to the bridge and opened a small compartment in the wall. Inside, she pulled out a long silver scarf and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. Jamal wondered if it meant something ceremony, tradition, or just comfort. She sat again and motioned for him to join her. He obeyed, settling down cross-legged on the floor. Using the translator, she spoke again. You are not like the others. Jamal tilted his head. Others. Many saw our ship, scanned, watched, left. You came inside, you gave life. Her fingers touched the floor softly. You stayed. Jamal felt a deep, unexpected emotion rise in his chest. He hadn't known others had passed by. He had thought he was just lucky to find her. Now, knowing she had been ignored, left floating, and forgotten made his heart ache. I couldn't just fly away, he whispered. It didn't feel right. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal, no bigger than a pebble. It glowed faintly in her hand. She held it out to him. Gift, she said. Memory. My world. You helped me. Now I share. Jamal took it with both hands. The crystal felt warm. Didn't know how it worked, but he felt the weight of what it meant. Not just technology, but trust. A piece of her past, her story. He smiled, touched deeply. Thank you. The translator repeated the words, and she nodded again. They sat together, two beings from different stars, sharing the quiet peace. Of a ship no longer lost, trust had been planted, and it was beginning to bloom. Asterisk. The next morning, soft light filled the alien ship. It wasn't sunlight. It came from glowing panels along the walls, now fully awake after years of silence. Jamal blinked as he sat up from the small corner where he had rested. He had used his jacket as a pillow and curled up beside a warm air vent. Across the room, the alien woman was already awake. She stood near a wall panel, her hands moving slowly over the controls. As if talking to the ship itself, Jamal stretched and stood up, quietly walking over to join her. The translator device rested between them again. She looked at him and spoke gently, her voice calm and full of thought. You gave the ship its breath, but it still cannot walk. Jamal smiled softly. Its engines are quiet, he replied. I can try to wake them too, but they're complicated. She tilted her head and motioned for him to follow. Together. They walked down a narrow hallway. The walls here were smooth, the lights low. At the end, they reached a room filled with tall glass towers machines humming with faint energy. Jamal understood quickly. This was the heart of the ship, its engine room, its core. He placed his hands on one of the towers and listened. Not with his ears, but with the feeling every mechanic knows, the quiet pulse of a machine waiting to work again. It was weak, but alive. He turned to her and smiled. It can be fixed. Her silver eyes lit up with hope. Over the next few hours, Jamal worked with focus. He carefully opened panels, examined wires, and patched connections using parts from his own shuttle. The alien woman stayed close, sometimes guiding his hands, sometimes simply watching. She never rushed him, never pushed. She simply stood there with a quiet trust that gave him strength. Her presence felt like a calm wind at his back, helping him move forward without fear. At one point, Jamal's hand slipped, and a wire sparked against his glove. He winced and stepped back, shaking out the sting. She immediately stepped forward, placing her hand gently on his arm. Her touch was light, but it carried deep concern. "You are important," the translator said. "You must not break." Jamal laughed softly. "I won't. I promise." Her hand stayed on his arm for a moment longer, then slipped away. Finally, after what felt like hours, Jamal made the last connection. A soft vibration rose beneath their feet. The core towers began to glow brighter, and a slow, deep hum filled the ship. The lights pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. The ship was no longer just surviving, it was waking up. The alien woman turned to him, her expression full of emotion. She stepped forward, slowly and gently, and placed both her hands over his. "You gave my ship life again," she said through the translator. "Now I feel I live too." Jamal felt something tighten in his chest, quiet happiness he hadn't known he needed. For years he had fixed things, machines, engines, systems, but this time he had restored more than a ship. He had given someone a reason to believe again, and she had given him something to a connection, a friendship, something pure and unspoken. They stood together in the glowing heart of the ship. Outside, the stars waited, but inside, two souls different in every way shared a moment of perfect peace. A gift of trust had been given. And Jamal, for the first time in a long while, felt truly seen. Jamal sat near the main window of the ship, staring at the stars. They looked the same as always. Tiny lights floating in the black sky, but tonight, they felt different, warmer, closer. He had spent so many nights alone, fixing systems and listening to the quiet hum of machines. But now he wasn't alone. The alien woman, whose name he still couldn't pronounce, sat beside him in peaceful silence. Her presence was gentle, like soft music playing in the background of his thoughts. She reached out and tapped the translator device. "The ship remembers," her voice said through the speaker. "It feels like itself again." Jamal smiled, still watching the stars. "I think I do too." She looked at him, curious. He turned to her and explained, "Before I found your ship, my days were all the same. Fixing things, sleeping, eating alone, talking to no one. Too quiet, too quiet." She nodded slowly, understanding more than words could express. Sat together in silence for a while. The stars outside drifted slowly, and the hum of the repaired engine core vibrated softly through the floor. Everything felt calm. Then she stood and walked to a small wall panel. She placed her hand on it, and the surface shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small object wrapped in silver cloth. She brought it over to him and placed it gently in his hands. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a smooth, round stone, glowing with soft light. Tiny stars moved inside it, like a sky trapped in glass. "What is it?" he asked. "Home," she answered through the translator. "A star map. My people give it only to those we trust." Jamal held the glowing stone in his hands and stared at it, feeling the weight, not just its shape, but its meaning. It wasn't just a gift. It was a piece of her past, a piece of her world. She was giving it to him, trusting him with it. "Thank you," he said softly. She smiled, her eyes shining like polished silver. Then she touched the translator again. "You will return to your stars?" Jamal hesitated. He looked around at the ship, the walls he had repaired, the systems he had revived, and the quiet strength of the one who had trusted him. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe, but not yet." She nodded. "You may stay. The ship accepts you." Those words filled him with warmth. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He belonged here in some quiet, strange way. Not because he was a mechanic, but because he had chosen to care, and she had chosen to let him in. Over the next few hours, they explored more of the ship together. Some rooms still needed repair. Others had lost power forever, but they didn't rush. They moved together slowly, side by side. She showed him how her people stored memory in glowing crystals. He showed her how humans made simple tools from scraps. They laughed when the translator failed to explain a joke. Sometimes they didn't need words at all. Later, they returned to the window again. The stars still shone, unchanged. Now, Jamal felt different. He had restored a ship. He had saved a life. But more than that, he had opened his heart to someone from a world he could never have imagined. And she had done the same. As they sat side by side, the ship drifted gently through space. No longer lost, no longer broken. Two travelers, two hearts, and a growing bond that spoke louder than any language. The stars outside the ship moved slowly, like silent dancers. In the dark sky, Jamal stood by the control panel, checking the energy levels. Everything was working smoothly. Lights glowed gently along the walls. The air was clean, and the engines were stable. The ship was no longer broken. It was alive again. So was he. Behind him, the alien woman entered the room. Her steps were soft, almost silent. She had changed into a fresh robe, soft blue, with thin silver lines that shimmered like water. She looked peaceful, but her eyes held a quiet question. She touched the translator. "Soon, I must leave this place," her voice said gently. "Turn to my people." Jamal froze. His hand stayed on the control panel, but his thoughts drifted. He knew this day would come. The ship was repaired. Her mission would continue. Still, his heart felt heavy. The silence between them grew long. Finally, he turned and faced her. "I understand," he said softly. "This is your home, your journey." She stepped closer. "You may come," the translator said. "If your heart says yes." Jamal looked at her, surprised. "Come with you?" he asked. She nodded once, slowly. The idea was beautiful and frightening, leaving everything behind: his station, his job, even Earth. But in that moment, he realized something important. Nothing there had made him feel truly alive. Here on this ship, beside someone who had trusted him fully, he had felt purpose. He had felt seen. He walked over to the window, looking out into the endless galaxy. So many stars, so many unknown places. But instead of fear, he felt calm. A quiet voice inside whispered, "Why not?" He turned back to her, his eyes full of feeling. "If I come, I won't know your ways, your language, your world." She smiled. "Just a little, but trust," the translator said. "And that is the beginning." Jamal stepped forward and gently held out his hand. She placed hers in his once again, just like the first time. The simple gesture spoke louder than any promise. Over the next few days, they prepared the ship for long travel. She taught him the basics of her navigation system. He adjusted small systems to make the ship more balanced. They worked together, side by side, as if they had always been a team. In quiet moments, they shared stories. She told him about her homeworld, where trees sang in the wind and the skies shimmered with 3 moons. He told her about Earth, about blue oceans, mountains, and music. They laughed when the translator stumbled over names, and they often used gestures instead. They didn't need perfect words. Their connection was stronger than speech. One evening, as the ship floated in the silence of space, Jamal stood in the central room with a small bag in his hand. It carried only a few tools, a picture of his parents, and the star map she had given him. He wasn't bringing much, but he was carrying something far more valuable: hope. She joined him, her eyes warm and kind. She touched the translator. "Are you ready?" Jamal took a deep breath, then smiled. Yes. They moved to the control panel together. Her fingers danced over the keys, and the ship began to hum with new energy. Lights brightened. The stars outside seemed to grow closer as the engines. Prepared for their journey, Jamal looked at her one more time. She was no longer a stranger. She was his friend, his guide, and maybe something more, something yet to be named. Together, they stepped forward into the stars. 2 souls from different worlds joined by a gift of trust and a future they would build side by side. The stars outside the ship were silent, but inside, everything felt alive. Jamal sat in the heart of the ship, carefully checking the small systems he had repaired over the past days. Wires were now neatly connected, screens blinked softly with blue light, and the engine hummed with calm energy. The alien ship had slowly transformed, no longer cold, no longer broken. It now felt like a living place, full of gentle warmth and quiet comfort. Alari, the alien woman, walked into the room carrying 2 small cups. One had a glowing blue drink, something from her world. The other held dark human coffee, made with the last of Jamal's supply. They exchanged cups with a smile, even though they never fully understood each other's tastes. They always tried. That effort had become their language. They sat side by side, not needing words. The translator rested between them but stayed quiet. Some moments didn't need speaking. Just presence. After a while, Alari touched the side of the wall. A panel opened, revealing a screen that displayed a beautiful, distant planet. It was her homeworld: green skies, floating mountains and rivers that glowed in the dark. Jamal stared at it with wonder. "It's beautiful," he said softly. She touched the translator. "It is peaceful. My people do not fight. We explore. We learn. We share." She paused, then added, "I was sent to learn about other worlds, about trust." Jamal looked at her gently. "What did you learn?" She turned to him, her silver eyes shining. "That trust does not always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from kindness." Those words stayed in Jamal's heart. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a mechanic, someone who fixed broken things and tried to do the right thing. But with Alari, he had discovered that kindness could be rare in the galaxy and deeply valuable. They spent the day exploring the ship together. Alari showed him rooms filled with strange instruments, ones that could listen to the energy of planets or store the sound of wind from a world hundreds of light years away. Jamal, in return, taught her how to build small tools using only spare parts and patience. She was curious, playful even, and laughed when she accidentally connected a wire backward, causing sparks to fly. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, a soft, musical sound that made him smile for hours. Later that evening, they stood in the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Alari held a crystal in her hand. Its light pulsed softly, in rhythm with her heartbeat. She touched the translator. "This ship is ready to go home." Jamal looked out at the stars. "And you?" She nodded. "Yes, but I do not wish to go alone." Her words hung in the air like gentle music. Jamal turned to face her fully. He had known this feeling was growing inside him, day by day. Warmth, the understanding, the way their silences were never heavy. She was more than a guest, more than a companion. She was someone who had shown him that connection could exist beyond borders, beyond species, beyond words. He smiled, full of emotion. "Then let's go together." Larry reached out and he met her hand with his. This time the touch was not careful or uncertain. It was strong, full of meaning. 2 hands, 2 lives, 1 journey. The ship's lights brightened slowly. It was ready. So were they. In the quiet moment that followed, the ship gently shifted its course. It's not just toward Alari's home, but toward something new, a shared future. A bond built from trust, from time, and from the small, powerful choice to believe in each other. And together, hand in hand, they stepped forward into the stars. The ship glided smoothly through deep space, its hull shining gently under the distant light of nearby stars. Inside, Jamal stood near the front window, gazing at the path ahead. There was no set destination, only stars stretching forever, and a quiet growing hope inside him. He was far from Earth now, far from the space station where every day had felt the same. But he didn't feel lost. He felt found. Beside him, the alien woman, his companion, watched him with calm eyes. Her name, which he had finally learned to pronounce, was Alari. The way she spoke, it carried music, soft and flowing like wind through trees. He liked saying it. It felt right on his tongue, like something familiar and beautiful at the same time. They had traveled for many days now, visiting small stations in neutral zones where alien species traded peacefully. Each place had its own colors, shapes, and sounds. Alari would share smiles with traders, and Jamal would fix something broken in return for supplies. They didn't ask for much, just water, food, and stories. And in every place they visited, they left behind something more: kindness. Jamal had become more than a mechanic now. Alari showed him how her ship responded to emotion, how it gently followed her thoughts, and how memories were stored in light crystals. In return, he taught her how to build simple human tools, how to cook scrambled eggs, and how to tell jokes that made no sense but made her laugh anyway. One quiet evening, they sat together near the ship's glowing center. The hum of the engine was soft, almost like a heartbeat. Alari held a memory crystal in her hands, its light shifting in soft colors. She placed it on the floor between them and touched the translator. "This crystal is yours," the voice said. "Your memories, your kindness, your name." Jamal blinked. "My name." She nodded and placed her hands over the crystal. It shimmered brightly, then dimmed into a steady glow. "Always remember you, always." He felt a lump in his throat. "I've never had anyone say that before," he whispered. She reached out and touched his hand. No translator this time, just touch. Just silence. It was enough. Later that night, Jamal couldn't sleep. He walked to the viewing window again. The stars outside seemed to shine just for him. A soft glow lit the corridor behind him, and Alari appeared beside him. She leaned on the glass quietly, her face calm and thoughtful. "You miss your world," the translator said. Jamal shook his head slowly. "I thought I would, but no, I think I found something better." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "Not something," she said through the device. "Someone?" His chest felt warm. He turned to her. "Alari, why did you trust me?" Answer at first. Then she touched her heart, then touched his. "Because you listened. Because you stayed." Jamal smiled. He remembered that moment when he first saw the stasis pod. Soft breath inside, foggy glass. And now, here they were, two strangers no longer strangers, floating through a galaxy that suddenly didn't feel so cold. The ship changed course slightly, adjusting its path toward a group of stars Alari had once called home. A new meaning. Not just a place. Not just a planet. Home was where trust was given and returned. Where silence held warmth. Where a human and an alien could share laughter, sorrow, and light. As the stars moved gently before them, Jamal reached out and took Alari's hand. And together, without speaking, they stepped forward into the endless night, no longer alone, no longer broken, and never without hope.